Here's a fun fact. Did you know that somewhere in the world today there is an actual country where you can literally vote democratically for all the things that you really want but never get them? In that same country, you can also vote just as decisively against things that you definitely don't want, but, like a giant hee-haw to the face, will almost certainly have them thrown at you anyway. Although that might sound politically backward, the question is, if there really was such a country, what country would that be? Iraq? North Korea? Some rogue nation state that nobody other than the people that actually live there has ever heard of? Well, yes, and probably yes. But also, well, I think we all know where I'm going with this one. And it's coming up on the Big Rip. Hey, what's up humans? Ali here from the Big Rip. Hope all is well out there, wherever you be. So, Scotland, the democracy that isn't a democracy, but sometimes is, but also isn't. But wait, what am I?
It's very confusing.
Well, if my understanding of the word democracy is in any way accurate, then no, it apparently is not. Not at least in a wholly democratic sense of the word. But how can that possibly be, you may ask? This is the West. This is the United Kingdom, a civilised first world country with news and electricity and everything. Aye well, that right there is just an unfortunate numbers game, guys. We are a small nation, and as a small nation, we're simply the smaller team in the league of all things politically, economically, although that's questionable, and quintessentially British. And that really is the beginning and the end of that. And here's why. The word democracy comes from the Greek words demos, meaning people, and kratos, meaning power. So democracy quite literally translates to people of the power, or people power. Either is fine. It's a system of governing where an elected head or representative, by virtue of his or her argument, is chosen by a majority vote and who is then tasked with serving those under the system, usually for a predetermined term. Everybody knows how it all works. The magic lies in simplicity. Granted, democracy, a pretty bare bones concept it may well be, but it has generally worked, at least semi-well for Western nations for the last few hundred years, and until somebody much smarter than me dreams up a better system, so it shall be well into the foreseeable. And all remains well. So then tell me, with such a seemingly simple choice and representation system, why does it work almost flawlessly in other countries, but here, in Scotland, it is more often than not a red sky in the morning moment, a troubled source of perpetual turmoil and political woe, and one that seemingly has us at never-ending odds with the rest of the UK. That's true. Well, there's actually a phrase for that: democratic deficit. Scotland does find itself in the weird position of sharing a political union with 3 other countries, all of which have their own best interests and political preferences at heart, and one of which has a voting population of more than 10 times that of Scotland. So you can see, in a system where majority vote rules, that population imbalance can get rather, well, imbalanced. But hey, fair enough. But here's how it all pans out for Scotland. The United Kingdom is, as we all know, but not everybody likes to admit, a political union of 4 separate countries. Scotland, England, Ireland, at least the north, but hey, that's a funny subject, that one, and our beloved Wales. On the premise that Scotland is an actual country with its own people, culture and values, and has been since the 9th century, and is not simply a region of the United Kingdom, here are 3 solid examples of where Scotland has fallen short when it came to our democratic choices being respected by our equal partners. And let's start off with the big doozy. Number 1, Brexit. Now, whether you're a leaver or a remainer is besides the point, and where we go in the future with regards to the EU is up for debate. I'm sure it all has its pros and cons, but that's a discussion for another time. The fact is that in 2016, Scotland, as well as Northern Ireland, voted pretty decisively to remain in the EU, whereas England and Wales decided they wanted something rather different. With a combined population of around 59.6 million for England and Wales, Scotland, as well as Northern Ireland with a combined population of only 7.3 million, well, they might as well have just stayed in the pub that day. Despite Scotland voting 62% and Northern Ireland's less decisive but no less valid 55.8% for Remain, much to the glee of Farage, Boris and Mogg, we were out and that was that. Number 2, let's talk about the Tories. Scotland hasn't voted Tory in a general election since 1955. It is now 2023, yet we've endured successive Tory governments and their policies for 46 of the past 68 years. Now, is that just an unfortunate byproduct of being a part of a larger political union? A win some, lose some moment, if you will? In a system where the benefits far outweigh the shortcomings, so it's all good. Like, really? Or is it having a party with policies that Scotland has consistently rejected for almost 3/4 of a century, basically imposed on us from afar and by the much larger population of what is and always has been effectively a different country? Well, if what we vote for here in Scotland is fully respected and honoured by those overseers elsewhere in the UK, then yes, it would be fair enough. But if it isn't, then no, it's simply outrageous and, dare I say it, borderline dictatorship.
I shouldn't have said that. I should not have said that.
There are those, of course, who would argue that the UK general election is a UK-wide vote, voting as one nation, together, for a single sovereign government. But that's just another example of attempting to swing away from the idea that the UK is a political partnership of 4 separate nations and is absolutely not, in any way, a country in itself. And to those people, I would just like to take this very rare opportunity of being able to quote the late, great Margaret Thatcher, and without being burned at the stake for it. She said, and I quote, "As a nation, the Scots have an undoubted right to national self-determination. Thus far, they have exercised that right by joining and remaining in the Union. Should they determine on independence, no English party or politician would stand in the way." What was that first bit? As a nation, am I good here? As a nation, hey, I'm just a messenger. Baroness Thatcher said it. Must be true. Anywho, moving on. 3. Okay, now for the big elephant in the room. Indirect 2. It doesn't matter how you voted in the 2014 independence referendum or how you intend to vote in the next one, if there ever even is one. This is wholly and unequivocally about the principles of Scottish democracy, or, arguably, the lack thereof. We're told it's a democracy. We believe it to be a democracy. We're told to lead the UK, not leave the UK. But when the metal meets the grinder, isn't it strange how all of a sudden our voices, our choices, our democratic votes, our political demands, our validation as an equal partner within the UK is swallowed into a sea of white noise within the halls of Westminster? Political murmurings, deflections, can kicking, and general disdain for the Scots is all too normalised and acceptable in that place. How easily the political will of the smaller nation to the north is so passively brushed aside with such indifference. Unionist or nationalist, it doesn't matter. If you love your country, and I'm sure you do, then you should be abhorred by that. That's who they're talking about. The truth is that regardless of how you feel about independence, that's besides the point. This could easily apply to any Scottish issue from any Scottish party. The NHS, immigration, the environment, the economy, anything. And it just so happens that in this occasion it is about independence. And Scotland has, beyond question or doubt, consistently returned an SNP government to the seats of power in Holyrood on the promise of Indirect 2. And, backed by independence supporting Greens, the Scottish Parliament has voted in favour of another independence referendum on numerous occasions. On each of these occasions, the Scots Gov has approached the UK Gov seeking a Section 30 order, which would put the result of another vote in independence beyond legal doubt. How did that go? And here's how that went. In 2017, Theresa May said,
"Now is not the time."
So that'll be a no then. In 2022, Boris Johnson said,
"I don't think this is the right time to be doing a constitutional change." Well,
that'll be another no then. Also in 2022, Liz Truss said,
I will not allow another independence referendum.
So not only will that be another no, but clearly a big for good measure. And again in 2022, Rishi Sunak said, now is not the time for an unnecessary, divisive constitutional referendum. Basically another no. Bearing in mind that Scottish voters have consistently voted for a party in record numbers with the promise of another independence referendum firmly at its core, only to be told, yes, it's a democracy. If you want something, you can vote for it, but you're not getting it. Well, I don't know about you, but to me that kind of stops looking like democracy right there and starts looking like a bit of a political prison. Sunak was also previously noted for saying that holding another independence referendum was a, quite frankly, balmy idea, but later went on to describe the union as there by consent and said that it exists democratically and voluntarily. Democratically and voluntarily. How exactly? You're basically saying that we're here by choice but can't leave. Only this very week we've had our very own Lord Foulkes, is that how you pronounce that? Arguing that ministers should be fined for promoting independence. On the Good Morning Scotland show, he went on to say the UK is not a union of equals and it was never meant to be, and that the idea of an equal union was nothing more than a myth that had been put around by the SNP. Now, if Scottish democracy was ever to take a proverbial punch to the throat, that would have been it. Not only that, but the UK government is now seriously proposing sanctions against Scotland, their valued and equal member of this family of nations, for spending money on reserved matters, i.e. independence, or anything else that seems to boost their way of life. Now, is that legally justified? I'm not sure yet. I've yet to look into it. Is it democratically justified? Not to my mind. But you know, if that was a marriage between two people, there would be restraining orders, injunctions, possibly some prison time for somebody somewhere by now. In this country, we have actual laws against that sort of narcissistic bullwhippery. So essentially, we Scots seem to be in this unique predicament of being able to vote against something, and by a significant margin, yet have it imposed anyway. We can also vote for something, and by a margin just as validating, only to be given the political middle finger. The truth is that no matter which way you spin this, and this has nothing to do with unionism or nationalism, so whether you're a nat or a un, it's pretty irrelevant at this point. This is quite simply about Scotland being a minority nation in a political union with a much larger neighbour to the south, and that, by sheer default, leaves us at least a 1 to 10 disadvantage when it comes to what we're choosing at the ballot box. Now, does that sound very Demos Kratos to you? If you believe that's about as democratic as it gets, then c'est la vie, the status quo is. But if you feel like it's an unfair political system where not only Scotland but Wales, as well as Northern Ireland, are also left at a bit of a loss, then the next question should be, what can we do about it? Or is there anything we can do about it? Can it be reformed in such a way that it truly becomes a union of equals? If so, then how? Or are we resigned into accepting that this is a hugely unfair system under a veil of apparent democracy, which it may well be, but only when it suits certain people, at certain times, in certain places? So when the votes have been cast and the numbers are in, does what we vote for even count for anything if it differs from the 60 odd million majority south of the border? And here is where we can truly ask, is Scotland really a democracy? I'll let you decide in the comment section. Thanks for watching.